All right, go for it.
So just like Amy said, it's going to be very quick because I went over the EMS pilot with you guys earlier to describe what we're working on with the air providers. And, you know, as we spread outside of Louisville, obviously more and more of us will be involved with this because it is our intention to go across the whole state with this in the future. So when that happens, obviously, you guys will hear a lot more from me in regards to that. But for now, this is just a Louisville thing. We're going to see how it goes. So that's really all I have at the moment. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that says my outreach efforts have been truly diminished because of the pandemic, just for safety reasons. As Lynn sits there and kind of nods her head. So, you know, just for my own safety and knowing that our EMS colleagues are high risk right now just because of their contact with the general population, I have kept myself at distance from them and will continue to do so until it's safe to go back out there and educate them. So, like I said, once our pilot starts to branch more out into the ground services and leaves the Louisville area, then the rest of the group can become involved with this and moving forward. So that's all I've got.
Awesome, and that was quick, 2 minutes. Okay, I'm going to share my screen for disease-specific care. All right, so as far as certification updates, when it comes to some of our information, as far as we know, HRAP has not changed any of their requirements as far as data. And I haven't had too much information as far as updates for anything else. And what I can do also too is in my new role, I'm going to have a hospital that I'm getting to acute stroke ready for HVAP in my system. So any updates I have, I'm going to send to Abby. So then I know we have a couple of HVAP hospitals here in Kentucky. That way they don't participate in SEQIP right now, but eventually, hopefully they'll come on. So I'll help feed Abby that information for you all for that. DNV, as far as some of the numbers wise, there haven't been any updates, but Lynn, I'm going to turn this over to her. She has gone through some of the acute stroke ready and primary standards, and she's had some information to share with you all.
So this is just like a 30,000 foot view, as my boss likes to say. That first key takeaway that Amy has there, that's not just the stroke team. That is like the ED people. So that the education for the stroke team is pretty much the same. When I say broader, I mean this extends to emergency department practitioners, hospitalists that take care of stroke patients, the ICU managers, the ED managers, people like that aren't called out in the Joint Commission standards. So I'm going to be meeting with our vice president of medical affairs to figure out, you know, I've got 4 hospitals with, I don't even know how many hospitalist providers running around, and they don't stick on just one unit. They go everywhere. So I can't say I got 10 that see stroke patients. I got hundreds probably of them. So what I'm going to present to, and I don't know if this is just my wild idea, to my medical people, my president of the medical affairs, is I'm going to put out quarterly notices on the requirement with a list of options where you can pick up education, along with my usual annual packet update that has data and resources that are Norton specific, and let them have an hour for that and say, you are responsible for collecting the rest of this education. And when we have a survey and they ask for your file, if it's not in there, your name goes on the RFI or the non-compliant finding or whatever DNV calls it. I think it's non-compliance, and they rate them levels 1 and 2. But that one really made my eyes get wide and give me some indigestion. For that reason, I can't track all the people in this whole system and their education. They're going to have some responsibility and accountability, because I think that's, of all the standards that I looked at, that's the one where I was going, oh crap. They actually use the NIH stroke scale and the blood pressure monitoring that comes straight out of the guidelines. It's like they took the table out of the guideline and put it in their standards. So they Joint Commission doesn't get that prescriptive. They say you follow a guideline, but they literally take this table out of the standard and put it in their requirements. They want you to track the ED arrival to admission and have that be within 3 hours. A couple other things I noticed after I sent you that, Amy, is they have specific reference to care plans that include oral care protocols, skin care protocols, nutrition protocols, or nutrition hydration. So they're going to be, you know, in my mind, they're usually, oh, I did put it in there. Sorry, brain fart there. Is that in, you know, those in order sets that are already applied to the whole patient population? Is that good enough? I don't know the answer. I may not know until we have our survey. So DNV is not necessarily we're coming every 2 years and we're going to say you're surveyed, you meet or you don't. It's kind of an ongoing forever process. They come every year and tell you, here's what you need to work on now. This meets, this doesn't, you know, we'll come back and we'll help you figure out how to be successful. That's the approach from DNV, which I kind of like it better, but still I'm thinking, wow, it's going to be DNV all the time. The job descriptions, they want a very specific job description for a stroke coordinator, for a medical director. They want competencies related to those job descriptions, and they want their evaluations to address all of those competencies. And that is part of, as I understand it, the ISO philosophy for performance improvement. I've actually having somebody ordering us the book on ISO because I don't have a clue about that. So I'll share if you want later when I get a clue. They want to measure the effectiveness of your community education. Well, yes, I said, well, we look at arrival by EMS, and she's like, no, that's pretty soft. We need something that's a little more solid. So she said, and it doesn't have to be complicated. Just like when Lacey's out doing a community program, you ask, okay, how many people know the symptoms of stroke? And 2 people say we do, and they get them right. And then you do the question again at the end, and 10 people give you symptoms back. That's your survey of your effectiveness. And they want you to track that. When I looked at the standards for PSC, I'm going, wait a minute, this is really comprehensive. Well, basically their philosophy is if you do it, we review it. I'm having to collect numbers of carotid procedures at both of my primary centers to submit with the application. So I'm thinking I'm going to have a little more collaboration with the vascular surgeons at those 2 places if they're going to look at that. A lot more work. So each certification requirements kind of mirror the other, basically on that premise that if you do it, we review it. So if even the primary that doesn't have the plus, okay, if you do any procedures there, they're going to be looking at them. If you keep hemorrhages, they're going to be looking at your hemorrhages just as hard as they would be looking if you were comprehensive. You just lose the research and stuff that's required there. So if you admit, like my Women's and Children's Hospital that's acute stroke ready admits patients, I'm glad we didn't stop collecting those primary measures. They're going to be looking at them. So just a perspective there, if anybody's thinking of changing or whatever, that's what I've gotten so far. And I don't think that's going to change too awful much as I get the rest of the way through primary and comprehensive, but that's what I got so far.
Thanks, Lynn. I was really surprised when it came to when you some of the stuff where you said that basically, even though it's an acute stroke ready or primary or comprehensive, they're going to hold you accountable for the other information. Rachel, do you have anything else as far as DNV for updates?
Yeah, I had a lot of the same notes that Lynn had, especially the performance evaluations. We saw that in our accreditation survey. They did not like our performance evaluations at all in general. And so we're having to our whole organization is having to redefine and look at the way we do performance evaluations. And they want, like even your stroke team, they want specific evaluation of their performance. So that's going to be a big issue for us. And as Lynn mentioned, there's 2 pages of specific education required for pharmacists, hospitalists, everybody, anything that touches the stroke program. The one thing that's going to negatively impact ARH as an organization is they did set a minimum dose for alteplase. So for our critical access hospitals, that's going to maybe prevent some of them from applying because they require 5 doses in 24 months. So, it just has to average out over the 24 months, and then you have to have 5 to be eligible to apply. So that'll be a little bit something that we're looking at. And, we're constantly reviewing missed opportunities, but some of our smaller hospitals don't have those opportunities to miss. So that's a big impact for us as an organization.
Yeah, Rachel, I wondered about that too. When I looked at women's and children's, because they've had kind of they had a lull there for a while, but we were okay with that. And then the one thing that I'd finally had, because I'm a little bit of a control freak, if y'all hadn't figured that out yet, those job competencies and evaluations. I can write a competency for my people and evaluate my people based on, those things. But that overall job description that Norton Healthcare has, and the whole high level evaluation process, that's out of my control. So, and we're now DNV accredited. So whatever they're working on at that level for our accreditation, I'm just going to have to rely on them with HR to get that all figured out. And then on my level, as far as how I evaluate my people, I can do those competencies. I'm not sure how it gets documented yet. I haven't got an answer back from HR for that. If there's going to be some system I can do that, or do I have to go back to old fashioned, type it up and stick it in a file? I don't know how that's going to work, but you can also put the competencies in, like what's expected of you, like in another document. So my stroke program overview document that kind of describes my whole program, I kind of have the roles laid out in there. So I'm going to clean that up before they come. That may meet that standard. But there are things, Rachel, we're just not going to have control over. The way your organization does evaluations and what they have in their system, we're going to have to be at the mercy of HR and DNV to figure that out, I'm afraid.
Yeah, they're really big on our education plan that I presented the past couple of years. They want to know, is your staff aware of what they're required to do before they are part of your stroke team, or each year. They're really big on that. And I lost my train of thought there. Oh, they are giving us till 2022 on the physician requirements for acute stroke ready, at least. They expect that to be phased in over the 2021, and we'll not survey on that until 2022. I guess they realize how big that's going to be, because we're having to take it to our medical staff and credentialing also.
I have a quick question. Educate me or help me. Do you guys know? Seems like when the Joint Commission sort of took the lead on all of this, and then DNV and HVAP came on, right? And then there's state level certifications in some states, which we do not have. But early on, the certifying bodies really sort of mirrored each other, correct? I mean, it was all pretty much the same, like early on, right? When DNV came out, like some of it was a little different, but for the most part, the measures were about the same. Is that right?
I will say, before this acute stroke ready version, they just cited national performance measures, but this version of acute stroke ready, they actually listed out each of the Joint Commission former CMS measures, just as they are in the specs manuals. So before, they just said you had to do national performance. It's spelled out very clearly now.
Yeah, and they, with the education too, I mean, the first copy of Acute Stroke Ready I looked at was the old one, and then the updated one came out, and I was like, wow. So they've gotten a little more specific, and especially, like I said, made that education a lot more rigorous, and how many people. And it does say in there, like Rachel said, that you've got time, like they're not going to survey on that until they're just going to help you get ready. And that's what, I'm glad you said that about the medical staff office. I pulled them in, as well as our CME office. I'm going to pull them in too, to see if they have any ideas or anything to offer, or places for the docs to house that specific, those specific 8 hours of education, other than I'm just going to have to pull them out when you ask me for them. I don't know how that's going to work. So, yeah.
Hey, Carrie, this is Chauncey. I can speak to some of that just from the state certification standpoint, because Florida was one of those states regarding how they started out being at least extremely similar, and then started having variation. But in Florida, one of our initiatives with legislature prior to my leaving the state was the stroke statutes. We had to say that we were complying with Joint Commission as Joint Commission standards, and we changed that right before I left. It was actually changed to Joint Commission and DMV.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder, when and how Joint Commission or HVAP get on board, once some of this stuff starts becoming more, I guess, like we're all getting educated, it just makes me wonder if the Joint Commission might adopt some more rigorous standards around some of these, or more specific guidance on the requirements instead of, just general. That's sort of what I wonder here, how that will evolve over the next few years. So interesting.
Mhm.
I don't know, my survey was pretty soft and when I compare it to past surveys, when our Joint Commission reviewer came out and did our two primaries and my acute stroke ready. I mean, I know I have a good program, but dang,
This year
I was
it
just kept waiting. The reviewer, she just wasn't as, I don't know what I want to say. I kept waiting for the bomb to drop and it never did. So, and I got away with one little RFI about TPA vital signs because we missed some of our pupil checks in the ED because we include that with our neuro exam. And I was just like, something's wrong here. I don't know if you were nice because we're going to switch and you're trying to convince us not to, or if you were nice because of COVID, or you're just trying to generally have a better reputation. I can't figure it out. But anyway, yeah, it was different.
We're in our third year, Lynn, and it's still warm and fuzzy. I will say it's a different survey environment completely.
That's what I heard.
They are very focused on finding problems, but it's not the same tone or anything that I've experienced before. And one of the surveyors just said, "There's no right, it's not like you're passing a test. You're not trying to get 100 here. If we don't find problems, then you can't get better." So that's the tone.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to hear because Joint Commission is so gotcha. And you can just feel the oxygen sucked out of the room when they find something. I mean, it's like, I'm glad it's not going to be like that.
Amy, I sent you that table to your email.
Yep, I just got it.
Nobody wants to see it, or if you can share, it's just the table from the guidelines.
Okay, I'll send it to Abby too, so then she has it and she can send it out. Okay, guys, we're going to switch over to Joint Commission. So I have information for thrombectomy and comprehensive, but I wanted to see if anyone from our acute stroke ready or primary had any updates first. I didn't think there was, but I didn't want to assume.
Yeah, I don't think there is, Amy. Thank you.
I think I saw Amy. I just wanted to make sure. Amy Porter, anything, just in case. I didn't want to skip over you guys.
No, I don't know of any updates for primary. Thank you.
Okay, not a problem. So guys, I don't know if you saw the email that David Davis set out, and it was released a little while ago as far as hospitals for initial and recertification for thrombectomy and comprehensive. So as you can see here, for initial certification, from now until February 21st, they're reducing their eligibility volumes by 80%. So now for mechanical thrombectomies, they need 12 in the last 12 months, or 24 in the past 24 months. And it says, like I said, this applies to hospital and physician volumes. Clippings and coilings, 12 in the last 12 months or 24. And the aneurysmal subarachnoid, 16 in 20 months or 32 in 24 months. Then when it comes to, hit the wrong slide. For recertification, what they're looking for is hospital must meet 50% of the eligibility volumes for thrombectomy and 75 for the aneurysm clippings and coilings and the aneurysmal subarachnoids. So for thrombectomy and comprehensives, we're looking at 8 in the last, for mechanical thrombectomy, 8 in the last 12 months or 16 and 24. For the clippings and coilings, 12 in the last 12 months or 24 and 24. And again, for the aneurysmal subarachnoids, 15 in the last 12 months or 30 in 24 months. The other things I want to let you guys know, just for future planning, in Joint Commission, the 2021A specifications manual, the release notes are out on the website in case you wanted to take a look at those. No real changes for acute stroke ready and primary. Just to let you know, they do list a change, but it's more in the reference material of an article that they're gonna add to the list of articles that they reference. But there are changes coming to CSTK 3, 8, 9, and 10, and 11 to the algorithms. So take a look at those in the release notes, just to let you know. And I don't remember the one specific one. I know it's either in CSTK 11, they're adding an NIH stroke scale of 6 to the measure description or something like that. So make sure you're taking a look at those. You guys will get a copy of this PowerPoint. You can click to this link. It'll take you right to the release notes to where you can start reviewing those. When it comes to survey information, I just want to say thank you so much to Chapman at our last meeting. I know you got bombarded between you and Vanita. So I really appreciate you guys stepping up and kind of being that first hospital to kind of give us information of what the virtual surveys are like. I did want to check to see, I know there was one hospital system that had one earlier in the week, and I'm not sure. I thought they were on. Has anybody had a survey since Chapman talked? Do you want to let us know anything that happened? Oh, I don't see that person on here anymore. And I don't want to say anything out of turn. Okay, we did have somebody that I know got surveyed. That person has jumped off the call. But has anybody else had any? I don't think so.
Amy, it's Betty.
Amy, are you?
Sorry. We certainly expected the Joint Commission to come, given the fact that they called us and asked us if they could come earlier, but we have not heard a word.
Okay, yeah, that I knew it was you guys, and I didn't want to like say anything that I wasn't supposed to, and I didn't see you at first on the call, and I was like, dang it. But okay, yeah. So they didn't show up.
No, and we certainly expected that they would be here on October 5th because that's when they asked us to move our window up, and we haven't heard anything as of today.
And this is Chauncey with Jewish, and the same, something similar with us. You know, the window. You know, they asked us to reopen the window, and the window came and went, and we have yet to hear of when they will be gracing us with their presence.
Okay.
Chauncey, what was your original window?
The original window was back in May, and then it opened it up again at the end of August through the month of September.
Wow. And you still haven't been surveyed?
Not yet at this time. And we, yeah, we're just waiting to hear from them.
Yeah, this is Lynn. So our window, they came during our window, our original window. It never shut down. They kept saying, "Are you ready? Are you ready?" And I was like, "Yeah, bring it on." So they came the Monday after the AANN stroke conference, which was irritating because I had to miss some of it to get ready. But anyway, one of the things that we found was they're not sending reviewers far away anymore. This lady could drive to all of our hospitals from Lexington. So that might be some of the holdup and why they're getting backlogged again if they don't have anybody that's close. They're not putting them on airplanes yet. At least that's what she told us at that time, and that was August.
I wonder if they're running on time, and I'm wondering too, like with initial surveys too, does anybody have a facility in their network that is waiting on an initial survey? Well, I'll let you guys know because again, the hospital system I'm going to, they just put their application in for thrombectomy capable. They put it in last Friday, so I'll let you know if I hear anything. I'll let Abby know or somebody know if it's running on time or what.
Yeah, this is Chauncey. The one thing they did say about our window coming and going was COVID. They weren't coming because of COVID rates again to this area.
Okay, does anybody have any requests from the membership as far as any program needs, any best practices, any documents you're working on you want to see if anybody else has? Okay, so I'm gonna take that as a no. Just to let you guys know, we were supposed to have scheduled a DSC meeting next Wednesday was our normal meeting. That one's gonna be canceled. Abby's going to be taking over those, and she will get with you all as far as, I told her technically we should have one the third Wednesday in December, but I know that's around the holidays and everything else. So look for an email coming from her as far as when you all are thinking about doing the next meeting, and then she'll take it from there. And with that, let me see. Next is going to be Bill, and let me pull up your presentation. Hold on one second.
I'm kind of glad I'm joint commission now. I mean,
Sorry, it's taking me a second.
those educational requirements seem to be a pretty significant burden, as well as your evaluations and competencies. That's going to be a huge challenge.
Agree, Bill. Like I said, indigestion.
Yeah. Are they allowing you some flexibility with the type of education? Does it matter?
Oh yeah, no, it's kind of like Joint Commission. It's like it can be anything.
All right.
It doesn't have to be CME. So it can be rounds. It can be a poster. It could be to teach a class. It can be pretty much what you say it can be. You just have to have 8 hours of it. But when you've got a group that large,
Hard to track.
there's no way I can. I mean, what I guess I'm going to do is, say, look, get a Medscape subscription and click stroke, so you get all the
Right.
stroke education,
Right.
and all the conferences, like all of the organization stroke conferences. I'm going to make sure I send all those out, and I'll just do like a quarterly update and say, here's your opportunities, here's what's expected,
Yeah.
and by the way, you get this packet, you got 7 more hours left, you got to do so, and then hold them accountable. At least that's what my proposal is going to be. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, my experience is that physicians and nurses need constant pushing to get their things done. So nobody's taking accountability or to do that.
Yeah,
on their own.
exactly. So, I mean, quarterly is the best they're going to get. I mean, you got and I'm sure, I don't know how many people got more hospitals than 4, but Lord, the more you have, the harder it is to make sure you're communicating with everybody you need to communicate with.
All right. Well, thank you. That was very interesting.
Ah,
hear.
you're welcome.
All right, guys. I just wanted to spend just a few minutes. I don't think I'm not going to belabor it too much, but after hearing Dr. Zamet's talk this morning, I think I was certainly very intrigued by several of the things that they learned up in Rochester, particularly around the pre-hospital portion of that. So I think that's an opportunity for the door in and door out committee to kind of maybe take a second listen and look at Dr. Zamet's presentation and see if there are some key things that we can pick out that might be practical or reasonable for us to try to implement throughout our network. So I appreciated that very much. This is just a brief list of the subcommittee members. We have a very good group. Most everybody's pretty engaged. We are willing to accept any other SEQIP team members who want to participate on this committee. We would love to have your input, your experiences, any suggestions or thoughts you have. Sometimes it's important to kind of keep us reined in or make sure that we're being practical. But if anyone's interested in joining this group, I think we'll talk about that later today. But feel free, we'd love to have you. Conversely, if anybody on that group wants to jump off, better have a damn good reason. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So updates to the best practices. We had our most recent meeting back on August 13th, the conference call. We acknowledged barriers that some sites are currently and have been experiencing with EMS for their interfacility transfers, to the point that some are even calling 911 from the ED in order to get an ambulance there. That's pathetic. But I also understand that you're constricted by the types of contracts and arrangements and capabilities that you have in your service areas. I would just suggest that we look for alternative providers if possible, if you can't find what's going to jump when you call, especially if you're a large center with lots of volumes. We recommended inclusion of other potential best practices, which I'll share in a moment. Updates are applicable to only some sites that have adequate resources or have raised the bar a little higher and are shooting for more consistent door to needle, less than 30, or door in, door out, less than 90. So we hope today that at least after you review some of the updates that we get any input from the group or other suggestions and recommendations. So feel free to provide your input. And once we get those and finalize it after we meet next time and kind of incorporate some of Dr. Zamet's things that might work for our network, then we'll share that update with the rest of the group. So this is a brief summary, and trust me, it's brief. If anybody knows me, Lynn referenced earlier about my awareness that executives like things in summary, but I'm not a very concise person because I kind of type what I think what I write. So this is a summary, so you're welcome. This particular, just go back to that. So our goals, our keys are, that's why I asked the question earlier about what should our goal be as a team, the SEQIP group. Should it be less than 120, less than 190? And it sounds we should be pushing and raising to achieve less than 90. And we kind of do that in the best practices. After Dr. Zamet's calls, I made an update to this. And for this, it was we wanted to break this into 2 buckets for PI, your front end process, your back end process. And now I think we need to include this pre-hospital bucket in some of our efforts to provide information to the emergency department physician and team before they even arrive that could speed up both the TPA imaging and your decisions to transfer and notification. So on the front end, early recognition, early stroke alert, early imaging, including that CTA along with the non-contrast on arrival of stroke scales greater than equal to 6, which I think Dr. Zamet kind of validated today that they were doing also. If you have other parameters, that's fine, but you should have some process to identify those patients and get that imaging done on arrival. Rapid results of the imaging, call to the EDMD, work with your CT techs, your radiologists, your Nighthawks, your VRADs. Make sure they understand that we're waiting on those results in order to make decisions on interventions and transfer. So once you got your results, then you're making a decision to transfer. Now, some sites we know that when patient arrives, they already know that that patient is going to be transferred regardless of any intervention. So keep that in mind as we talk about the back end process for early notification to EMS. And you notify your air or your ground team at the same time you make a referral or decision to transfer. I find if you do this in a parallel process, it works much better. So I question and I always push our team on, I see where you made the referral to Skyline in our instance, which is a close center for us. But then it was another 15 minutes before we notified EMS. That process should occur simultaneously or at least back to back within a couple of minutes. And then once that site is known, then the update is made to EMS of where their patient is going. And we should have them on their way already or possibly arriving to the ED if we've pre-notified. And then of course, work with your EMS agencies and others to overcome some of those barriers. Make sure you set those expectations for them to mobilize when you are pre-notified. Don't put them on will call or standby. Tell them you need to mobilize to the ED. We have a patient that's going somewhere, an acute stroke. You need to get here. We'll figure it out before you get here where they're going. And then provide timely and objective feedback to your ED, neuro, and EMS teams. Focus always on the positive, where we did well, how we contributed to that patient's journey and potentially improving their outcomes. And then also addressing and doing that, of course, politically correct areas of PI opportunity. Nobody wants to be called out, but you should be providing feedback that's objective and saying, per guidelines, have we thought about this? Maybe we need to discuss this as a team, but make sure that you're identifying those areas where they need to work. And then keep that feedback transparent, but always patient-centered. So on the next slide, after our meeting last week, there were some sites that are kind of raising the bar and trying to stretch their teams to improve both their door to needle times as well as their door in and door out times. So we thought it was worthwhile to include some of these recommendations for those sites who have the capabilities and the resources to do that, or who choose to work towards that goal, although it may take some time. So we wanted to modify that front end process to include earlier recognition. So Dr. Zamet did a great job talking about the pre-hospital stroke scale, and others have talked about that. And if positive, doing the CSTAT or RACE in the field, and you work with your agencies to make sure that they're completing those when indicated. That pre-notification to the ED, we want them, or we'll work with our agencies now to include that, the results of that, of both of those scales when they notify the ED. And after Zamet's talk this morning, it seems like that's a tremendous opportunity to relay a lot of information, including the time last known well, your results, your present illness, your past medical history, your meds, all those types of things. So that when the patient hits the door, a lot of that information has already been obtained and decision-making can be made rapidly. And of course, we want to run reports to include that information, including the pre-notification. A lot of the run reports might have a stroke alert already built in. So provide feedback to your EMS teams regarding all the things that we want to see on those reports so that we can track and improve. And then another recommendation was to establish parallel processes in the ED for both alteplase and LVO eligibility rather than a single linear process. And that recommendation has been out there for a while. We just haven't really included that in the recommendations before. It's got to be a team effort. Not one person can do everything. So charge nurses or somebody else needs to be stepping up and making sure that we're getting all those things done as quickly as possible. One of the ones that the team recommended was to consider, particularly where you're working with EMS agencies who may not be consistently doing your CSTAT if they have a positive pre-hospital stroke scale or RACE, then consider having the RN do that on arrival, even if you know they're going to get a CTA. And the thought was that's a quicker way perhaps to identify that patient might be a potential large vessel than saying completing a full stroke scale. And also conducting it with your EMS while they're still on site, which ultimately would show them that there's value in doing that and that it's part of the medical decision making. And so I guess by being an example to them that they would continue to do that in the field or start doing it in the field. So Dr. Zamet mentioned that they had thought about that, but thought that might be an additional burden to ask nurses to do CSTAT and in addition to a stroke scale. Again, this is a recommendation we want you to consider if that's appropriate for your team, particularly if you're struggling getting the CSTATs or those other types of things out in the field. Another recommendation was to challenge ourselves to get a door to CT result in less than 25 minutes versus our current goal of less than 35. And then as much as possible, door to CTA results in less than 45 versus our current recommendation of less than 60. That's challenging, but I think, again, getting the CTA on arrival when indicated and having proactive communication between your CT techs and your radiologists is very important. There needs to be active and making sure that people are aware that we've got a stroke patient waiting on these images. The last bullet, even in the absence of CTA, if suspicion for large vessel from CSTAT or RACE, or they have hemiplegia and or aphasia or stroke scale greater than 10, which Dr. Zamet also referenced, then you need to kind of, start that referral process, notify your EMS, drip and ship, and get them moving. And that's a potential decrease in your decision to depart times if you can do that. And I've heard things in the recent symposiums or summit that we participated in that some sites are accepting those transfers for suspected large vessel occlusions, even in the absence of a CTA. So, if you have good data, you have a positive CSTAT, or, your stroke scale is greater than 10, I'm hearing, and maybe Lynn or some of the other comprehensive centers can chime in on that. I'll pause for a moment.
There's places that aren't able to do the CTA. So yeah, I mean, if it looks like a large vessel occlusion, we would certainly not turn that patient away simply because they couldn't do a CTA or get the result in a timely manner. I mean, in a smaller center where they would wait till tomorrow for the result because it was at the nighttime, we wouldn't turn that away. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
You're trying to validate that
Yeah.
there are other ways to get a patient somewhere without having to get advanced imaging. So.
Correct.
Yes, I concur with that as well. This is Margie.
Good.
We accept patients without the CTA as well.
All right, so we wanted to incorporate those into the recommendations just so that we have some clarification there. As with everything that we've recommended in these best practices, it really is dependent on your own system or your site's capabilities and your resources. We put these recommendations out there for you to have that as a tool to modify to your own sites and your capabilities and to continue to stretch yourself. So lastly, I wanted to talk about what I thought was a really interesting process that apparently some of our sites are already doing, including UK. This two-tiered stroke alert process in the ED, and the stroke alert, they call a stroke alert red for any patients who are in the TPA window. And excuse me for saying TPA, guys. It's really hard for me to change after all these years to say alteplase, and it takes longer. So stroke alert red for TPA eligibility, parallel process, and also working them up for LVO and MER eligibility. And then a basic stroke alert for patients who arrive outside of that window, but less than 24 hours. But it's important that the team understands you have to create the same level of urgency for either alert because time equals brain. So again, we're just going to share those as recommendations for some sites who might be interested in doing something like that. To try to differentiate between the two, but maintain the same level of urgency. So I think that was it. One of the things that Carrie showed on the data today relative to our overall door in, door out times 2020 versus 2019 showed that our median times in 2020 have increased over the previous year. And I know there's so many variables into that. I did notice, we did notice on the 2019 that there was the range of time, the door in, door out times. One case, at least one case went up to like 18,000 and some 600 minutes. So we know that's probably not true, but it's going to skew that data considerably, particularly for the 2019 data. So I think Sasha might talk a little bit about that on her next talk about the importance of validating and checking your reports and validating the data that you see so that our numbers look correct. So any thoughts or input into those recommendations? Do you think they're reasonable? Any concerns?
I really like, Bill, how that last slide where people that when they're in that certain time window that they have that stroke alert red versus stroke alert. That's really interesting.
Yeah, we always worry about stroke weary, making our ED stroke weary with our trauma protocols, our ACS protocols, and the stroke protocols. We haven't extended our code CVA window to 24 hours for every single case, but I haven't seen any that arrived after the TPA window that we didn't do the stroke workup, and we don't always call the alert. So I do think there's opportunities there to kind of, at least in our situation, to try to do something similar. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we haven't named them stroke alert levels or anything like that, but our algorithm definitely plays out. Within a TPA window, you call for any neurological deficit. If it's 6 or greater, you need to get the CTA and CTP. After 4.5 hours, you really only need to call stroke if the NIH is 6 or greater, or the CTA shows something worrisome, or you have another suspicion like the waxing and waning symptoms. It's hard to tease all that out. I mean, obviously they'll call if they think they need to call, but that's the way ours is as well. It's just, it's not named level 1 or level 2, but that's what it is.
Well, I think it's something that you should at least talk to your stroke teams about, throw it out there to see if there's opportunity in your sites to do something similar, like I'm going to do with ours. So what about any thoughts on the ED arrival CSTAT from nursing? we're good. It's reasonable to recommend in cases to do that.
It's always reasonable to recommend it, whether that they will do it on top of everything else.
Yeah,
That's the barrier that we have. I don't want to ask the nurses to do one more thing. So
yeah.
you can
And that's why,
extrapolate the CSAT from an NIH though, so you could retrospectively figure out what it would have been.
true.
It wouldn't be that hard.
True that. I agree. You know, I would love to get a modified ranking, you know, in the ED as well. I'm not been very successful in getting the nurses to do that, even though it's probably the most simplest assessment that we can do. Pick a bubble, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or whatever it is, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So yeah, there are challenges, and we keep asking our ED teams to do more and more and more. That's why I throw it out there as whether it's reasonable. But as I said before, we make the recommendation. If you can do it, do it. If not, it's okay too.
Yeah, I do know, and somebody from U of L may want to chime in since I'm not on site there much anymore. But, and again, we know recommendations sometimes are just reviewer dependent, not necessarily a systemic recommendation. But during our intercycle call, it was recommended that the nurses be doing a severity scale in the ER as part of best practice, and that it was fairly common across the country to do so. So I take it as a comment only. I don't know if anybody wants to expound on that, but that was a recommendation from our intercycle call last year or beginning of this year.
Wow. Across the country, I guess
There are some publications in the literature from nurses, you know, incorporating it for best practice as far as the validity of picking up on it and improving the door to device times, as well as just detection of elbows. So on several scales, as far as how easy it is for the nurses. So I think maybe that's where some of that literature is coming out, as well as with what you're talking about with door in, door out, as well as for the direct arriving. I mean, clearly, if you're not even assessing for it and you're losing 30 minutes in the ER while they're fumbling around figuring out, you know, if they even did the NIH within the first 30 minutes of the patient's arrival, you know, the severity scale is much faster than an NIH initially. So I think that might be where some of that's being born from. But again, I think it's individualized and based on the needs of different facilities. And also, to your point, Bill, I think resources, you know, what do you do at your center? How do you have a relationship with others out? And does it piggyback well with your current processes, or would it be totally a brand new thing to, you know, integrate? So.
Well, I commend those sites that are, you know, taking, you know, kind of trying to raise that bar and stretch their teams and identify those LBOs earlier in the stay and initiate whatever they're transferring or their puncture times. So yeah, I think we'll keep it in there as a recommendation for those sites that are capable of doing that. I'd be interested to see some of that literature, but I'll follow back up with that.
And just, I think it might be more relevant at a hospital, say, who doesn't have the capability to do CT angiography quickly. Right. So you need an achievable, and maybe in that type of facility, they don't even have NIH stroke scale certified nurses. So you're thinking about your non-certified centers, right, that are referring new patients, where they're not keeping those patients at all. So rather than keeping up with the annual certification, et cetera, sometimes these assessments are much quicker and easier to perform. So.
Well, then, Lynn, that's something else you can include in your competencies, CSTAT. For your nurses.
Oh boy, yeah, we're pretty ingrained. There's an NIH stroke scale pretty much in 15 minutes when the patient hits the door. They get a really quick one. Yeah. So, I mean, we are getting an NIH stroke scale. They're looking for the elbow right off the bat and looking for the 6. And we've taught them, you know, if you've got one side down, you've already passed up 6. So they're in tune to picking up on that. So I'm not as afraid we would miss something if they didn't do a CSTAT, is in a place where they don't have nurses that are used to doing that all the time. But yeah, I mean, sure. I'm sure I haven't had my intracycle call yet for comprehensive. So it's coming up though. I'm just finishing up that fun CMIP and getting all that submitted. So let you know how that goes.
Well, I thought Lacey's presentation earlier was excellent, and we really do need to continue to work and push our EMS agencies to do those in the field. We can't lose sight of the importance of doing that and communicating that when they're calling ahead. So, excellent. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. If you have any other thoughts or comments, you can always email anybody on the team or myself. And then after we've had a chance to kind of update those, we'll send them out to you guys to include in your protocols. So, very good. Thank you.
Okay, next is our data committee with Sasha. Sasha, are you going to share your screen or do you want me to pull up your presentation? Oh, there we go. Sasha, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I had to hit *67 on my phone. I called in because the mic on my computer just acts up periodically. Okay, dokie. So, hello everybody. How much time do we have, Amy? I know I'm towards the end of the tail end here. I want to be respectful of everybody's time as well.
We have 3 others after you, and we finish with this at 2:20.
Oh, okay, we got plenty of time. Okay, alrighty. So I wanted to start with the CSAT pilot. The last time I talked with the subcommittee, we were talking about how we were going to collect this data, because I'm sure most of you all know if you enter in data into Get With the Guidelines and you click transfer, you do not get to place the EMS data elements into Get With the Guidelines. So we had discussed utilizing Excel, Access, what kind of platform that we could collect the data if Get With the Guidelines could not get something turned on for us rather quickly, which we kind of know that Get With the Guidelines. Sorry, Abby, it just moves a little slower than we want it to, because we're in the stroke world and it moves very fast. And we had talked about trying to get a SharePoint site to allow all of the centers to voluntarily enter their data in, of course, without patient information at the same time, so that an Excel file isn't being sent around or getting lost. So, Carrie, I did reach out, and we cannot get one through the ULH server or the ULP server because it requires the VPN. But the IT desk was helpful and showed me about just a basic Google account. So I set up a free Google account. The email address is sashafaye.lopez@gmail.com. We can each have a center enter in their own Google account. You can just make one and enter in data that way, and I can share the file, or we can just utilize one ID and I can just share the password with everybody because it's specific to just for this. I don't have anything personal on here. It's specific to SEQIP. And here is the link. And then I have step-by-step instructions on how to access it. First, you would just go to a Google account, google.com, to log in. If you go to these little box, I don't know what you call that, but it's basically a bunch of apps. Can y'all see my mouse too?
Yes.
Okay. So when you click on that mouse, those 9 little dots there, it populates all these apps that you can access and share on the Google account. So we would want to share and utilize an Excel sheet. So we click that. And then I went ahead and made a CSAT Louisville pilot sheet, and I put in all the elements from Get With the Guidelines that we want to utilize. So we can even tailor it. We can put in more data, less data. So I kind of wanted some feedback on that, what you all were thinking. Abby, have you heard anything back on being able to turn something on sooner and to Get With the Guidelines? So I kind of have to pause here and get some feedback from everybody.
I have not heard back yet. Let me follow up. I know that our health IT guy was gonna kind of reach out and see what what it would take. So let me follow up on that. I apologize. I didn't do that prior to this meeting.
That's okay. That's all right. I went ahead and just started something because I'd rather have something than nothing. What does everybody feel about utilizing a Google account? Any reservations?
Let's see, Amy, Porter, Lynn, I'm trying to go through here quickly to see if the abstractors are also, if Megan, yeah, Megan, I see Megan, I think.
Yeah, Megan's on here.
And then I don't see, because it looks like it's right now, this would just involve U of L Baptist and Norton system. So thoughts on that Google database and sharing, putting in the de-identified patient data? Don't forget you may be muted.
I'm okay with it. I have not seen it yet though.
Mm-hmm.
This is Lisa. I'm okay with it too.
Okay. Maybe.
So how do we look? I mean, when we're going to go look and compare and all that, do we just take our data and then run all data out of Get With The Guidelines and use that to compare? So how do you like kind of get in there with everybody else to benchmark and all that stuff?
We can't get anything out of Get With The Guidelines because we can't put anything in.
No, I meant for everybody else.
Oh, this is just the transfers, Lynn. So
Okay.
Get With this particular database is just for the transfers.
Okay.
Or that come in by air methods and then, or not air methods, but air evac. So the air methods, PHI or air evac right now.
Okay. So this is just for CSTAT. This is not all EMS. Okay. I must have missed that part. Okay.
No, this is just, Sasha, maybe just to make sure everybody understands, because I know it was a hard concept for me to grasp. I couldn't believe it didn't do it. That you can't collect any field data on transfers in. Once you hit the transfer button and Get With The Guidelines, all that stuff goes out. So we lost all of the ability to collect data on our transfers.
Correct.
So this is an option that we'll be able to use our 3 healthcare systems here in Louisville so that we can get transfer data and aggregate it. And then we'll use the direct arriving, we'll use Get With The Guidelines with all of the EMS fields. And I'll let you handle it from there, Sasha. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. That's exactly it. Thank you for helping me clarify. Y'all can still hear me, right? I had to mute for a second because my dog decided to play the squeaky toy.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, that was kind of like our solution of a temporary database until Get With The Guidelines can use those options or build options that we can put everything in one spot.
And Abby, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sasha. I don't know if you wanted to chime in on something that's going to happen in January, because we were going to hope to get some baseline data and then all the EMS fields. Or are you going to cover that, Sasha, in your?
If you're talking about the picker list, I am going to talk about that actually during my AHA update, but
okay. Oh, that's good. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say though, since you already let me unmute, so Get With The Guidelines, there is a group who has paid like a kind of like a SEQIP somewhere else, who is paid to have some inter-facility transfer data elements created. And so what I'm trying to do, along with some other states who found out about this, is how can we get those data elements turned on for the initiatives that didn't initially pay for it, so that we can capture that data. So again, that's kind of what they're referring to. You guys know, if you click the patient comes in via EMS, you can answer all this great data. If you click that they came in via transfer, you can't even enter it in the fields. So that's what we're trying to either speed up or find out, how to work around that.
Thank you. And for the time being, until we get more from Abby, I'll try to make it where data entered populates onto another sheet with an automatic like bar graph and algorithm in a dashboard that we can utilize to give back to EMS. All right. Some of you all may know about this SEQIP band app. It was a way to communicate all of the data analysts when we were looking at a listserv. So there's only about 28 people, I think, that signed up, and they found it during our last webinar that was recorded and published by the AHA. And this was recently submitted, this screenshot here, and try to zoom in. So anybody that has Epic, this is kind of exciting for you guys. Epic has partnered with Get With The Guidelines and allowing you to data abstract according to this little snapshot here in the EHR, and then it's going to go into Get With The Guidelines stroke. So it's just kind of something I wanted to throw out there. I don't have Epic anymore, but that is something really nice and something to look into. That was communicated in our thread this week. And if anybody's interested, this is what the app looks like. Here's the QR code if you want to join, and then here's the link. And I'm sorry, Abby, if you cover a lot of this already. This is just basically a breakdown of all the things I was going to talk about and Get With The Guidelines. First was history. Everybody needs to remember with data validity going forward that e-cigarette use and smoker are separated out. I believe at one point smoker encompassed everybody. I know that I have entered patients in if they were vaping or juuling, any kind of tobacco use, I would click that they were a smoker. However, now you can separate this data out. So just know that going forward, when you start pulling your risk factors and modifications, that these are separated. There's a lot of things that are being separated here. Here's your history. I mean, it's really good. Just want everybody to remember that as they go forward when they start pulling some of their data. I know I'm in a routine where I just pull certain things over and over again.
Sasha, can I just mention too, only the actual smoker, you have to do smoking cessation on. So if you say that they're a user of electronic cigarettes, smoking cessation is not officially required yet for those patients.
Oh, well, that's good to know. That's actually really, that helps with separating it out as well. This was just a snippet of the data breakdown, which is on the Get With The Guidelines. When you're in abstracting patients and you click the blue link above every data element in each section, this will take you straight to the data definitions. And something else on here that I don't think I highlighted on here is obesity and overweight. Just knowing that the BMI, you can just by having a BMI of 25 or higher, you can select this overweight and obesity. I don't think people realize that these little data elements are in just with history. It doesn't actually have to be defined by the physician that says this patient is obese or overweight. Just having that BMI calculated is enough to get the element clicked. All right, on to pre-modified Rankin scores. So now, if everyone has noticed, you can collect your pre-modified Rankin in not only the comprehensive sites, but your primary sites as well. And I would assume acute stroke ready if you have the overlay. And then something that I've noticed multiple times over the past few years, I just want to bring it back up again, the initial exam findings. Some centers use this as a way to capture the stroke symptoms when they come in, and you can see here weakness, altered mental status, aphasia, all the different types. However, just know that the rule, this data element is only required if the initial NIH score was selected as no. So let me go back for a second. So if you're going to select no, we had no NIH score, this is not required to complete the record, so it's optional. Or excuse me, it's required if it's no, and then if you complete an NIH score, it's optional. So just everybody know that as well. It's a great tool to use. but different centers may utilize this data differently. So everybody needs to be on the same page on how to enter the data and how to use it. I'm sure everybody has seen this before, now that we're capturing thrombolytics and all the two different types here. Same with infections. Notice that this is a different tab. This is an active infection versus the history. So notice that the history tab is different than the active one. A lot of things I feel like came out really quick this year with updates. It was just like each month, boom, we had another one, boom, we had another one with COVID. And I'm sure everybody has talked a little bit about the diabetes portion and how at first it was very annoying and cumbersome to answer all these questions and to put in every medication class. Know that now Get With Guidelines has that target type 2 diabetes inpatient honor roll award. And I included the link here so that you all can see that entering all this data can actually get you awards if you're treating your diabetic patients, even though it's not all required to save the record. It does link you to getting awards, which is great. And I have a question for everybody. And this is just a Google picture of a patient with angioedema, obviously. Has anyone else across the SEQIP group noticed an increase in angioedema this year? None? I guess we're just special. I know Floyd Memorial had 2 this year and Mary Elizabeth has had 3. So that's 5 in 1 year. And to us, we thought it was significant. Obviously, when you run this report, even Abby pointed out the thrombolytic complications, you can't separate out angioedema versus a bleed. But I was looking at our SEQIP thrombolytic complications and just watching and see if the percentages have been going up or not. But it'd be interesting to see the differences of these thrombolytic complications just because having 5 in the same city almost, even though it was right across the bridge, I thought that was pretty significant.
Sasha, do you know if the patients were on ACE inhibitors?
Actually, the one this week was allergic to ACE inhibitors, so she was not. I did look at that, but I did not look at the 2 in the past.
The other 2 were on ACE inhibitors.
Yeah, it's a fairly common response, actually, if you're on ACE inhibitors. I know.
But isn't it less than like 1%?
Yes, but it hasn't been studied that much as far as in the TPA literature anymore. I mean, because it's like a common risk on ACE inhibitors, and if you treat it early, it usually, you stop the drip and treat it early, it usually resolves. The other thing too, just with ACE inhibitors in general, because of the frequency of their use and they're becoming, they're the cheapest, and over time, angioedema itself just from the ACE inhibitors is getting worse. So, I mean, that could be for multiple reasons. So you're saying it looks like it might have been 5 patients out of 702?
So far, yeah.
Yeah. That's probably right along the lines of the 1 to 2% that would be expected.
I was actually a part of a Joint Commission survey for a hospital, and the surveyor even said that there's research that females on ACE inhibitors are more likely to have angioedema than males.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I didn't know that one. All right.
Has there been any, sorry to jump in, has there been any look at the ACE inhibitor allergy also? Because the other ones that we've had that weren't on ACE inhibitors in my time were all allergic to ACE inhibitors also.
I don't know the answer to that question, Deidre, but it seems like it would have something to do with the, the metabolism of the ACE itself, I would think. And then I wonder how many people are actually allergic. because if they have a cough and they can't tolerate it, a lot of times that gets listed as an allergic response.
Right, right.
So, yeah, that's
Interesting.
hard. But it's a good question, very good question, especially with, I think it was, you said it was Jessica's group, right, over there at Floyd, that had the patient that was allergic and also a response. Interesting. I'll look into that. We'll look into it.
Cool. Thank you. So stroke OP1, yes. I have, not just me, my whole team and I, we've all kind of ran into little snags with stroke OP1. If you fill out this outpatient tab accidentally, in addition to filling out all the other tabs with admin, clinical codes, admission, hospitalization, discharge, I challenge all of you to review your data at this level, at the patient record level, because that's how you're going to see your patients that populate into the different populations, what makes them excluded and what's not. I know for a fact that a couple weeks ago, I had some entered incorrectly and they were populating, couldn't figure out why. And then yesterday I reached out to Abby and Amy on, if you notice down here, I have March and April down here that are blank and they have zeros. And up here, it shows that their ICD-10 HIN code is correct and it's entered, but my measure value is blank and this is what the data should have showed. Well, on this previous tab here, excuse me, it's this tab now, sorry, I put a slide back in. Make sure that you're clicking general inpatient care, that the patient's truly going to the next level of care, because if you downgrade the patient and accidentally click critical access hospital, it could kick them out of the bucket. So that was what was excluding some of my patients, and easy fix, but just something that I thought everybody would want to know, and be able to look at down at the deeper level, because if I wouldn't have pulled it this way and sent it to Abby, and then she would have never probably figured it out, because at a glance, I couldn't figure it out myself and I'd looked at it forever. And there's always sometimes some glitches. We had a glitch with stroke 4 last month and we couldn't figure out why it wouldn't exclude the patient and get with the guidelines. IT department did reach back out and told us how to exclude the patient. Didn't quite make sense, but it worked. And then in September, we had our comprehensive 11 and 12 data that was not populating, but it has since resolved. So as of right now, I don't know of any other glitches that are happening with reports. And this is just that article that Amy was referencing to. Here is the updates on the Joint Commission for each core measure of comprehensive 8, 9. They've renamed some of them. Here's your modified ranking that's going to take effect January 1st of next year, and all the different buckets that we will be reporting on. And I believe, Amy, you had alluded to the NIH being an exclusion criteria. So in addition, the denominator exclusion for ischemic stroke patients who have an initial NIH less than 6 after hospital arrival was added to the measure information for form and algorithm. So just keep that in mind going forward of next year, which if this morning I heard the speaker say that he started his code oval alerts based on NIH 10 or greater. Was that correct? So that was kind of interesting how this element isn't really gonna do totally different things here. Not sure I agree with it, but just keep in mind when you start running your data. And then I had also mentioned what everybody else had mentioned, which is the volumes, the temporary volume change in all of the Joint Commission. This was from the consulting company sent out by David in our mass emails. And by the way, if you didn't read all the way through that email that included these volumes, she offered a free event. I signed up for it because it didn't say if it was free or not. It ended up being free. She's going to discuss certification and things like that. I always think it's nice to participate and hear other people's. Just some events with data. Our AA local chapter, we have the ophthalmologist speaking on November 5th. And here is the meeting ID and how to get involved. last but not least, I need to know when our subcommittee would like to meet again virtually with a Zoom meeting, what time zone, how many people want to participate, and I can try to set something up. I used to have something a little more regular, but obviously with COVID and everybody's on a different schedule, I know sometimes I'm working from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. just because it works better for my schedule. So while I got everybody together, does anybody want to give me a preference on day of the week and time? I can set something up and hopefully we can start recording again.
Hey, Sasha, we're running a little short on time. Can they just email you if you all are interested in the day participating or giving Sasha some feedback for her data subcommittee? Can you guys just either get a hold of her or Abby or even Carrie can direct the email if you have her contact information?
And Amy, for time purposes, you know, we pretty much covered the survey updates earlier. There hasn't been any interval since Chapman provided his. So I think, you know, to give the other subcommittee chairs plenty of time, I think we can just do that unless there's somebody who objects. I think we're fine.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, Sasha. Carrie Crockett, you're up next. Do you want me to present my screen or are you going to share from yours?
If you can present yours, please.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Our committee is the Navigating the Stroke Continuum of Care. Before I go over everything we've kind of just did over the year, I'm going to have Miss Margie share this new tool that was created by our committee so we can share it with you guys and then also put it online as a resource. So Miss Margie, if you want to do that, and then I'll jump in after her.
Hey, thank you, Carrie. I sure will. Our group wanted to come up with a kind of a standardized handoff tool that could be utilized by pretty much any facility that's getting a stroke type of a transfer or receiving the transfer. And so we did a poll. They were good enough to send out a poll through the SEQIP group, and then we collated all of our information, and we met and tried to come up with a format that would kind of work for any kind of institution that was utilizing the tool. So we put the information into, as you can see on the screen here, the transfer handoff report, and then we did a shift-to-shift bedside report, and then later on down here, as we go down, you're going to see some specific information related to core measure and consults. So I'm just going to kind of briefly go through, but then this will be attached for you as well, if you want to scroll back up there for me, Amy. We're going to go to the transfer report first. So our clinical summary, we included the stroke diagnosis, past medical history, some of your standard things, allergies. What I kind of wanted to go over a little more specifically was this clinical status, because we felt like we wanted to get some very specific information of what your receiving people would need to have to take care of the patient. So recent vital signs, including a blood pressure, most recent any treatment they may have done for the blood pressure at the transferring facility. An NIH score with description of the current deficit so that we would know a difference when the patient arrived to us, if there was a significant change in that NIH. The time of the last known well or witness time of onset, and obviously we all know the importance of that. Any treatment they may have already received, such as thrombolytic and the dose and specific information concerning that. Your post-thrombolytic, where they're at in their actual assessments on that, if they received at the facility, how far they are into their assessments and what phase they are on there, and if they have actual documentation of where the vital signs and neuro assessments were, to send that along. ICH score, if that's appropriate, dysphagia status, labs, imaging results, and then family contact phone number. And this was a specific one that we seem to struggle quite a bit with, is that the patient gets on the road with no family contact, and then we are needing more specific, especially if they're an ELVO candidate, and don't have that information from the transfer facility or the EMS or flight teams. So that's some of our clinical status. And then we try to incorporate core measure information all the way through this little tool, and kind of reemphasize so that things such as your antiplatelet, your VTE prophylaxis, and those things, if they've gotten started, that we know that those things have been accomplished, and can look for that into the records that they're sending for the patient. So the next piece, we went to the shift-to-shift report, and it's not quite as detailed because we know that you're not going to be getting some of the long-term information that's coming from the patient and what they've had at other facility, but you still want to get like a clinical summary of what's going on for the past shift for that patient, the plan of care, what pending tests and orders may have occurred, new or changed medications, and what their actual diagnosis is, because that's going to impact what core measures you need, and also what discharge instructions and those things that we should be working on in education all throughout the patient's stay. We also want to make sure that we're starting immediately, giving that stroke TIA caregiver education, and looking at a NIH together at shift change, just like we emphasize that for our handoff report. We also want to do that in our shift to shift report, so that we're picking up any subtle changes that may occur on the patient. You want to have the dysphagia status, where they're at in their nutrition and what kind of consults and those things that need to occur, and where they're at with their dysphagia evaluation, whether it's with speech or a bedside evaluation. And then the last portion here is our core measure status and consults needed. I know we're kind of short on time, so I won't go through every piece, but I did kind of want to highlight a little bit about how it's broke down into admission, day one, prior to discharge, nursing care plan, stroke education, and discharge plan. And we took that off of somebody who had that into their, built into their report that they had done. And we felt like that was a really nice flow to make sure you're hitting all those things, that those, another general reminder of where we're at for the stroke patient. So that is all I have. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, or Carrie or anybody on our team.
Thank you, Margie. And like I said, we're going to make sure that this gets out to everybody. I'll be sure to make sure to send it to Abby, Carrie, and Britton, so we can make sure we put on our resource list on the website. Just a few other things I wanted to go over. So on the website that we have, I just want to remind everybody of the resources that we have for you guys. We have a community resource list template. We have Kentucky Stroke Support Group list. Another resource we have is Preparing for Stroke Follow-Up. This is a great resource for the patients. And then we have a page about follow-up questionnaire, just, kind of like a template when we're calling and following up with our patients, some questions that are good to ask that you can use to benefit your follow-up calls. One thing I'm going to do here within the next month, starting next week, is following up with all the support groups that we have on the list. With COVID, I know a lot of things have changed. My support groups have went virtual. Some support groups have been on pause. So we want to follow up with everybody to see what's everybody's groups doing, so we can have an updated report for you guys. And to add on there if there's a virtual option, or if somebody that leads the group changed and we can update it. We want to update it annually around this time, just so that way you guys have that resource. And I'll be sure to make sure we get that to the website as well. So some of you may be hearing from me soon. So like I said, all of our resources are on the website. I also want to encourage anybody, we're always looking for people to join our committee. So please reach out. You can put your name in the chat bar over to the side. We meet right now bi-monthly for the most part, and we communicate frequently through email on our projects. But we'd love to have some new faces and new members join our committee. And then our committee really wanted to reach out to you guys and ask, what needs do you guys have from us? what resources or tools would you like us to look into that could help benefit the patients and caregivers throughout the stroke continuum of care? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Or if you want, because of time, you can type it into the group chat, or you can email me, and I'd be happy to take note of that so our group can look at our goals for the next year and our new projects. And that's all I have, unless does Bill, Danielle, or Margie, do y'all have anything else to add? Are you good?
I think it sounds great, Carrie.
Okay.
That's great.
If you guys do have any questions, just feel free to email me or send me a question in the chat room. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Your group does such amazing work with all your tools that you have for your patients. I always love it. I think you guys do a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Up next is our community and public health education and outreach. And Bonita, I'm going to get your PowerPoint up for you.
All right. Well, while she's doing that, I just want to shout out to the team. This committee is amazing. They came together for our annual review, and it's Natalie.
Oh, Bonita, we lost you. Let me see if she's still here.
No.
Did she get kicked off? She might have.
She got kicked off. Okay. Let's maybe go on to Britton, and then when Bonita gets back on, we could switch back.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine. Let me stop sharing. And Britton, you can take the floor if you want to share your screen or if you have anything that way.
Hi, the only real update I have is I'm going to need, Abby, I'm going to need your bio and your headshot to update the website. We just got over our Stroke Care Network Summit this year. It was an awesome event, so I am back to being able to make those updates. So if you have anything you'd like to update, let me know. I do need to finalize the education page on the site. But other than that, we're rocking and rolling. So if you have anything you need updated on your subcommittee page, just shoot that my way. And I think that's all I have.
And
Britton,
then
do you need any other headshots or bios from anyone? I couldn't remember if everyone had those submitted to you.
I think Abby's is the only one that I need to update. I'll double check, and if I need any more, I will let you guys know.
Okay.
And then just to update the entire group on the steering committee for the HDSP, the website is in need of a lot of work, the overall website. So the steering committee has committed to completing that project and working aggressively with David to get the background aesthetics more uniform, more healthcare associated, as opposed to just the, I don't even know what you call that, but it's basically the prefabricated stuff that sort of is just up there that doesn't sort of align with the topic. So each chair of the heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, CASH, will all be meeting with David and making that a priority. Abby and I have a meeting with him in the morning to sort of go through the overview again to help support what Britton is already doing, and then work collectively as they do, Britton and David, to upgrade the entire site with current information. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That also brings me to, I've updated a lot of the different subcommittee photos to something that's relevant to your subcommittee. So if your subcommittee page still has a stock photo on it and you want to change it, I tried to pick a stock photo that was kind of universal. But if you want to change your photo, shoot that to me. I can do that. Or if you have a mission statement that's missing, let me know if you want to update it. We can pretty much have some flexibility on what we put on there. So,
And please, please, please do make that a priority and get that information to Britain if there's a gap. Please. Thank you.
All right, let me check to see if Bonita has made it back.
I saw her, but then she went away again. She must be having internet connection issues.
Abby, do you want to go ahead and present your screen?
Sure.
Okay.
All righty. Let me do this. Okay. Can you see it now? All right. So it was like Sasha Faye and I rehearsed this, and she set me up perfectly for some of the things I'm going to talk about. So just a couple of things, and I know Amy may have mentioned some of them, but just a nice reminder, especially as we move into the end of the year, getting closer to award time. So the first thing I wanted to just talk about was the No Diabetes by Heart initiative. And Sasha Faye said, last year was a bit challenging with some of the new initiatives kind of all pushed out at once. But this one, in addition to the data elements in the Get With the Guidelines tool, there are a lot of resources available, around cardiovascular disease, stroke, and diabetes. So if you know of anybody within your institution, or if you guys are looking for resources, I'm actually on a committee nationally that's working on some really neat things that we're going to be pushing out here pretty soon. But No Diabetes by Heart is the website. There's a whole professional site included that has resources, a lot of stroke specific resources and education around the diabetes population. And just to reiterate, we do have the honor roll. There were 13 hospitals who received recognition on the Target Type 2 Diabetes honor roll last year. So that was amazing considering the bumps along the way. But just remember, so what we look at is a composite score of these 9 data elements. It includes the 7 achievement measures, as well as the diabetes treatment and the therapeutic lifestyle recommendations. So I'll be sending out more information here shortly, but just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that we're doing it again, and you do have the opportunity to be recognized for this specific patient population. Telestroke, you guys may hopefully got either an email from me or directly from IQVIA. Last night, there was an update that included some enhancements to our telestroke layer. The telestroke overlay has been available for a while. It wasn't very exciting. I don't know a lot of hospitals that were taking advantage of the opportunity. But with the update that went into place yesterday, I hope that some of you guys will check it out. As you can see, this is what kind of used to be available. And here in the red box is now everything that they've added. Just a lot more robust data capture. There's a couple customizable fields where you can, provide the information about the hospital that actually provided the telestroke services or received the telestroke services. We do have a telestroke time tracker, and all of this will now feed into the new measure set that was released. There's new filter options that were released, and then there's actually the time tracker report. We added all of the telestroke data elements to that as well. So this is a free layer that hospitals can turn on themselves in your stroke site characteristics. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I can walk you through the process. And I plan to kind of play around with it a little bit. So hopefully I can provide a little more detail on it as well. The EMS Special Initiatives tab. Again, I know this is front and center, especially for the data pilot in Louisville. But what I really wanted to just share is, this tab is available also free of charge to be turned on if you want to collect some pre-hospital data. The really cool thing about it is the ability to customize a picker list so that you can specifically track data elements, by EMS agency. And this is kind of what we were talking about, with the kind of issue with capturing inter-facility transfers. Right now, this is only activated for kind of pre-hospital EMS, but we're working on the other half of it. What I wanted to make sure that you guys looked at, so if you have the EMS tab and you notice that there are agencies that you cannot find when you load your picker list, send an email to me. We're going to be doing an update this December or January. And if I can get all of those agencies submitted, they'll be added in that update. So I know it's, again, super important for the Louisville area and their pilot, but anyone who is using the tab has capabilities as well. So if you do have the EMS overlay, here are a couple of the things that come along with it. So in your configurable measure report, this is where you can filter by agency. So you can run any report, pre-notification, really anything, door to CT, all of that, and you can run it by EMS agency. We also have this new feedback log that can automatically generate based off of the data that you enter. And then the EMS time tracker is this Excel document here that's basically like all the raw data that is used to populate our feedback log, but it could also be used to populate any feedback logs you guys may already have set up. So just another way to get with the guidelines, like your one-stop shop for data collection, and just we're trying to beef it up and make it really fit the needs of our hospitals. So the last thing that I want to share, and I don't know a ton about this, but the bundle care or bundle payment for care improvement initiatives, if you're involved at all or your hospital's involved in the BPCI initiative, the fourth year, so 2021, CMS has now allowed, vendors to submit data on the hospital's behalf, and Get With the Guidelines is one of those vendors that's been approved. So if you have a stroke bundled care initiative in your hospital, Get With the Guidelines can submit all of that data on your behalf. There is a customer webinar that's sometime later this month or maybe November. I'll get that information out as soon as I have it. But really all of our modules have the capability to share this information. It's going to be free. It's really just another way that Get With the Guidelines can take the data that you're already capturing and use it for kind of some other reason. Here are the measures that are included for stroke. It's smoking cessation, the kind of traditional CSTK6, which will be added kind of back in. So any hospital who doesn't have the STK overlay, you'll still have the ability to take advantage of this for free. They'll just kind of add it into a bundle for you. And then time to intravenous thrombolytic therapy. So that was kind of the down and dirty 4 big things that I thought would be important for you guys. These slides will be available. So if there's anything you want to dig down into a little bit more, just reach out and I'll be happy to do so. There you have it.
All right, guys, any questions for Abby? Like she said, she'll have the slides for you guys, and you'll have the slides for these presentations sent in an email and with the recordings. you'll probably have multiple emails because I'm sure with the data, we won't be able to put everything into one. Bonita is on the call. Bonita, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then you can take it away.
Okay, we'll try it again. Sorry, guys. Hopefully it won't drop me off this time. But basically, I was just doing a shout out to the team. I don't see anyone. I don't see Ann Fowler. I think it's Ann Ricketts now. I don't see Bridget, but it's basically Ann Fowler, Bridget Swatzel, Natalie Littlefield, Amy, Carrie, and myself. And we did have some help from Tracy Monks from AHA as well. So I appreciate all the work and time and effort they put into it. We, as Carrie said, were developed, or our inception was after the second 2018, after the SEQIP meeting. We basically got together that following February 2019, and we released our first standardized messaging resources last year's SEQIP meeting. And so this year we were due for our 2020 review. We did start fairly early on requesting the info. Everybody should have gotten an email around the 1st of July, I think, with some basic information and asking for any input. We did get input, so we were really thrilled about that. So this year, the 3 categories that were brought to our attention that people wanted was obviously information on COVID-19. Since we were doing COVID, they thought, well, shouldn't we include influenza, and also universal design? So 3 new categories have been included in the standardized messaging folders, and you all should have the link to that. If you have any problems, if you don't remember where you put it, if you're like me, you filed it nicely and now it's where did I file it, on a regular basis. So just let me know, we'll share that back out. But with COVID-19, we had 3 infographics that were submitted to us. You can see they're really nice. The one is a little bit wordy, but we all decided that it was worth having that information out there for anyone that wanted it. So we kept all 3. I think the next one is the flu. It's influenza, I think. There we go. And basically you can see these are CDC documents, but if anyone does have anything they'd like for us to review, not only on influenza, but COVID or universal design, please don't hesitate to send that to me, and I'll make sure that it gets to the committee for review. And universal design, this is a new one, and this is one we kind of struggled with a little bit, but as you can see, because there's only one infographic, and it's quite busy. We decided we liked it anyway. It is a 2-sider. I just put the front side because it is kind of overwhelming unless you actually looked at it. Great information though. I mean, it's really good stuff. So that's why we decided to keep that. So I think with these 3 folders, we will be adding. So if you think of resources that you're using that you would like for us to add to those folders, what we would love to review them. Just like I said, send them on, and we'll look at those for inclusion. And just to kind of go over the topics, we know that we've gone up to 16, but we felt like all categories we really do need to keep. So we still have A1C, alcohol, blood pressure meds, cholesterol, COVID-19, hands-only CPR, influenza, overreact to stroke, physical activity, signs and symptoms of a heart attack, signs and symptoms of stroke, smoking, sodium, universal design, and weight and diet. So those are our 16 categories. Here's the committee members. Again, don't hesitate to send us anything that you would like to be reviewed. Sometimes some good stuff comes, but it's very agency specific. So we're trying to look at those national resources like AHA, CDC, when we're putting them in there. It's not to say we wouldn't, but that's basically what we're looking for. So that's about it. That's our 2020 review. We're real excited that it went quite well, and look forward to seeing if there's any information you guys would like to have in there. And glad I actually stayed on and didn't drop off in the middle again.
All right. So I think with that, Carrie, this is where we're going to talk about our goals for next year.
Yes, so we are approaching the end of our scheduled time together, and thank you everybody for, we have not lost very many people as the day has progressed, so appreciate your time and input today as always. So yes, so I think some of the things that are clear, that are outlined as goals for next year are trying to follow up on the overreact data that we have and generate that and get that out to the group. I will also work with Abby to try to follow up at the national AHA level and see where that's at and if we have access to maybe some type of a report or if they have decided to keep that internal. Then door in, door out. I think that this will be, I think, a critical measure. And perhaps as you guys are thinking about what that looks like and what our goals would be for next year, as Bill asked you, all of those best practices, I think that Bill and the rest of the team have outlined are very important. And of course, as he indicated, need to be modified to the individual facility. And perhaps what we might do is pick one of the classifications to focus on. So for example, if it's the TPA patient, drip and ship, that's mechanical thrombectomy eligible, or if it's no TPA and mechanical thrombectomy eligible, right? So that seems to be something everybody is focusing on. So I know Sasha has been monitoring this from the data side of things, looking at how can we take the baseline data, look at all of the interventions that are being applied at the hospitals as best practices, and then look at Bill and his team and anybody else who would want to be involved, being able to put forth an abstract at either the International Stroke Conference or the AANN or a process improvement conference or something, because I do believe, I know, Amy, you had mentioned to me, I think last year, again, we're kind of ahead on this as a system, trying to share best practices and make progress throughout the state. So I want to throw that out there. We're also looking at the EMS pilot. And then if you also can think of, as Carrie asked, if there's anything on the continuum of care that are gaps that you're struggling with, that you need resources for, or you need the team to sort of investigate what are the best practices, then that is certainly something that I think I heard her say that they're close to having the opportunity to engage in a new project as they're wrapping up some of these that they just shared today. So those were my initial thoughts as far as I know, things that are being worked on. I think if we could get some specific objectives of what you feel would be helpful to work on, and then that also, of course, aligns with our strategic map for 2020 to 2023. So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion for all of you of what you see the priorities being and what you would like us to focus on.
Well, Carrie, I mean, I'll jump in. When I saw your data presentation for this meeting, I think the inpatient stroke measures that you pulled were pretty interesting when we're looking at time to treatment for inpatient stroke. I was telling Carrie about 2 years ago, Dr. Adewale from University of Cincinnati, I was talking to him and he felt like within the greater Cincinnati stroke, with all the hospitals that they work with there, they definitely see a delay from the time that the decision is made to give that patient TPA, and even sometimes when it gets to that point of inpatient stroke of calling a stroke alert, things like that. But from definitely the time to decision to the time that TPA is actually administered. So that could be something. I mean, I know you guys have a lot going on, but when you did pull that data, I thought that was pretty interesting. And not a lot of people talk about that. Like when we go to surveys, and you guys should know from your facilities, Joint Commission just really kind of looks at what your process is and that your people know how what happens during an inpatient stroke alert, but they never ask for data. So I think that could be a good area for you guys to put yourself on the map as working on as a state initiative. But that's just my opinion.
I would say that as well. And actually, during my survey, they asked me about inpatient stroke and how I did, just like I was presenting my data for the ED and our turnaround times. They asked me about my inpatient and wanted that data as well. So I think it's a good topic.
Is there anybody, maybe in the comments, or if you would like to open up on your mic, is there interest in that from the group where we could begin to formulate a work plan on that?
I think it would be good. I think it's something we've not all, I have, my teams are supposed to collect that data on our inpatient rapids, and how many were neuro-related rapids, how many turned out to be strokes, and what was their outcome, and looking at their times. I've got one hospital that's been a little troublesome to get it done, but this would give me a little more, oomph to get that done. And I think it's something we all should probably be looking closer at than we have been. And let's see where we are, at least get started and see what it looks like. And any best practices that we can share are always welcome. And as far as the door in, door out stuff, I have done that webinar a few times, and I have to say it's the most requested hot topic across the country. And I believe the one time I did it, there were even international folks on the line, and the responses I got, I was like, wow, I was like, I didn't realize that that group was so progressive. And thank you for letting me share the work of the group with others on that webinar, because people are hungry for that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I do think, yeah, go ahead.
Carrie,
Sorry.
this is Bill. I would agree. I think inpatient strokes is probably a tremendous area of opportunity. Our experience is that the documentation and the data is much more difficult to find and relate back to your processes on the inpatient strokes. It's just not as robust. It's hard to kind of piece together what's going on, to be honest with you. So might be a good area of opportunity. So.
I agree. It's difficult to recognize, and we see delays all the time.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, this is Chauncey at Jewish. And I love this topic, and I think that's a great idea. What we usually see nationwide is that everyone, even with an extremely robust ED workflow, the inpatient, either it's so far and few between that it doesn't really get as much attention, or it doesn't get any attention at all. We actually have at Jewish, we have our own dashboard separate from the ED for our inpatient, just because they're different care teams. So I'll be happy to share anything. Our inpatient actually does pretty well from what I've seen in other places in the nation. And I'd be happy to share just the different tools that we use. And I think the hardest part that a lot of people forget with the inpatient piece, especially, is that the time doesn't start ticking with the code stroke activation and rapid response. It starts with the sign and symptoms being recognized, which sometimes are hours. If the team doesn't understand what they're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Does everybody capture their inpatient strokes in Get With the Guidelines? Because I'm just curious if that's the data collection that you guys want to use, if you want to focus on that, just to make sure everybody is entering that, because that could be another thing.
Yeah, I know we haven't done it all along, but we're starting to try to make sure we get those entered. Just one, so I have a report to pull that way, rather than having to just take individual things. And just for tracking them, we have a inpatient code stroke order set. So that's how we find them. Other than that, it's the place that's in charge of the rapid response team, and then pulling the number of that were called, and then looking at the code stroke. Those are the ones we look at, that they put the code stroke order set on and used it. So those are the ones we track. That's the best we've been able to do with that. But I definitely have been having them put those in over at least the last year, maybe before that, I can't remember.
Great point, Abby. We're not collecting or extracting that data. That's an excellent point.
We are not either.
We're not at Baptist either.
We're tracking it, but not putting it in the guidelines.
So then sounds like it's an important initiative, but just like some of our prior initiatives, it's not something that is being consistently collected by all facilities in the Get With the Guidelines tool. So the first step in this is, and somebody can volunteer now or think about it, email me, email Abby. We would need a leader to work with the team. I would think that if it's something we're going to try to pick up and work on, we would have to first determine if everybody could, look at their inpatient strokes and begin entering that data at the beginning of the year on inpatient strokes. So anybody that would like to jump in and lead this?
So the one thing about putting in to Get With Guidelines, there's a lot of places that the reason why you have, a separate ED code stroke log is because not all the patients code as anything stroke related. So I feel like, there are times when it's appropriate to not put it into Get With the Guidelines, even though you can use it that way. But there's obviously no right or wrong way, but I did want to just throw that piece out there regarding putting it into Get With the Guidelines versus using a code stroke log or workbook or whatever you'd like to call it.
Yeah, it's like sometimes if they had their stroke inpatient, like, and they were something else, like I don't know, maybe a cabbage, their primary code's not going to be stroke. So they wouldn't go in there. So I don't know if it's I don't know how that would work if it's better to put it there. And I don't know the consistency of places across the nation putting it in there for us to be able to pull a benchmark to compare ourselves against either. So definitely
hard to benchmark.
Yeah, uncharted territory.
Yeah, I don't think you could. Yeah, I don't think you could use it as a benchmark, could you? So it is one of the limitations of Get With the Guidelines. However, Get With the Guidelines, you can enter patients into it that do not code out as a primary diagnosis of stroke. It's misinformed to think that you can't. It's also misinformed to think that you have to use this and report those patients as a primary diagnosis. That is absolutely not the case. You can enter any stroke patient you want into the Get With the Guidelines. There are a fair number of centers throughout the country who actually utilize the tool that way so that they're not double collecting data. The challenge is when you do run your reports, right, like for your Joint Commission submission or others, it will drop off those patients that do not carry the primary diagnosis because they then fall out of the metric. So it's not that you can't enter them. It's not even that you can't measure their data. You absolutely could. It's just a matter of how you choose to run the report, whether it's all the patients or just the patients that code out as the primary diagnoses. Right, Abby?
Well, and so anyone who is worried that it would mess up their award data, the inpatient strokes have their whole separate set of measures. So you can run all of the same reports, but they're specific to those inpatient strokes. So they are held to a different standard, and they're not going to, mess up when being compared to your data that's EMS arriving, primary diagnoses patients. So Carrie's right. The tool was created so that you can capture those patients. We see it probably 50-50, at least in some of the other hospitals I work with. But if you want to, like you said, if you want to be able to capture all your data in one spot, that's kind of why they created that option.
So think about it. It's a big initiative. It would require a lot of networking and processes. And if somebody would like to lead it, we'd be happy to take it on, I think. All right, the door in, door out, the EMS pilot. Anything else? Any other areas of focus for next year outside of our ongoing work around the core measures? And, I did have one person send me an email wanting to know to query the group if anybody is interested in forming a subcommittee on door-to-device times, which would then be, of course, looking at direct arriving as well as the transfers and best practices around meeting the door-to-device times as a, a statewide system of care. At this time, we have 5 hospitals, 6 maybe. Northern Kentucky, they're doing thrombectomies, right? There's one of the hospitals up in Northern Kentucky. No, they are not certified, but are they doing them? No. Okay. And then King's Daughters, no. So we have 5 hospitals that I know of consistently doing this type of work in our state. So if anybody's interested in that, please let me know, and I'll coordinate getting the representatives from those 5 hospitals and anybody else that would like to be involved as a referral center. I think it ties into what Bill and everybody's trying to do with the door in, door out. So that was something else that was thrown out to me as well. Anything else? Okay, well, looks like we are right at the 3 o'clock hour. Sasha has added in the comments there that U of L, we're not entering these unless TPA was giving. I think she's referring to the inpatient strokes. She's nominating Chauncey to lead the inpatient stroke. And Lisa's thanking everybody for a great meeting, and she had to step off. And so Chauncey has replied, and she's willing to take it on. So, all right, Chauncey is the winner. She will.
You win.
First come, first serve, you win. So please. That's it. That's it. So anybody that would be interested in helping Chauncey serving on this committee or any other committee, please reach out to myself or Abby or the leaders themselves, and we'll actually please copy myself or Abby, because we need to make sure we keep the list of the committee members up to date as best as we can. And thank everybody for attending from my perspective today. Especially thank you to Amy. All the best to you. You will be missed. We're welcoming Abby in officially now. It's official changing of the guard today, and we're thrilled to have her.
I'm gonna miss you guys. Holy smokes, but I'll still be bugging you. I got your emails. Don't you worry.
Definitely will be missed, Amy. Thank you for your years of hard work and your expertise and your guidance, especially with this EMS, initiative that we're starting. We'll miss you at K-Beams on the Cardiac and Stroke Subcommittee, and thank you and best of luck in Cincinnati. They're going to be very lucky to get you, and you will take their program to new heights. I know you will.
I'm excited. I'm kind of doing the best of both worlds. I'm going to be Lynn when I grow up for a little bit, and once I finish my nurse practitioner, then I'll be Carrie when I finish up being grown up.
Well, good. When you finish, you come on back to Kentucky. We'll use you. We'll find. I don't care. I'll retire so you can come on board, or I'm sure we can find a position for you at any of our hospitals. Meaning any of the hospitals, not the U of L hospital. Any. It looks like also, just as feedback, it does look like Margie has responded and said she's interested in working with the group on the door to device. So I will connect the 2 people that I know that are interested, and the 2 of them maybe can get with the other hospitals and some referrals to establish a group. So looks like we have our marching orders for next year. Very exciting, very exciting. And thank you to everybody for stepping up and leading these new initiatives, as well as sustaining the old ones. It doesn't amaze me. I'm used to this group's high level of performance, but always taking on more, even in very difficult times. And so appreciate you so much. And Abby, Amy, I'll turn it over to you. Final thoughts?
I think that's it, unless Abby, do you have anything else to add?